Behind my mother's house, there is a long row of celery gone to seed, pale and bolted and hollow, that no one has ever had the heart to pull. Ruth and I planted it together on our knees that spring, far more than any household could eat, the way you plant celery when a wedding is coming in the fall, so it can stand in jars down the tables where the church will see a marriage is being made. My younger sister Ruth was to be married that November. The banns were never read, and the celery grew on all summer anyway, not knowing, the way a growing thing does not know, until it went bitter and stood there hollow, and it is standing there yet. I cannot walk past it, even now, without being carried back to the morning the whole church came to know, and to what I did in the bishop's front room when he turned and asked me who else had known. I want to tell you about that morning, and about the one thing I did in that room that I have never confessed to a living soul in our district. It is a small thing, 3 words really, and it is the largest thing I ever did, and I have carried it quiet the whole of my life. I was raised to believe a good woman never has to choose between obeying her church and standing beside her own blood, that the two are one road, walked home together. No one warned me a morning could come when the road would fork under my feet, and I would have one breath to choose. I still thought the 2 roads were one. Before I go on, let me say the one thing I say to every woman who finds this window for the first time. Stay. Sit down with me a while. There is a little bell near this window, and if you ring it, I will know to call you back, because the things I say here are the things we are never permitted to say aloud in the district. And when you have a quiet minute, down in the comments, tell me one thing, and I read every one. Have you ever had to choose, in a single moment, between someone you loved and a rule you were raised your whole life to keep? I have asked a great many women that now, and most of them go very still, and then they nod. Most of us have stood in that room. Most of us were never let to say what we did there. That is the thing you have to understand about how a plain girl is raised. No one ever sits you down and says, your church must come before your own sister. It is far softer than that, and it goes deeper for being soft. From the time you are small, you are taught that to obey is to love, and to love is to obey, and that there is no daylight between the two. You are taught that a secret kept from the elders is a sin you have made your own, and that to shield a straying soul from the church's correction is not mercy, but pride. And I believed it then, the way you believe the ground will hold your foot. I had never had cause to test it. I have written all of this down, everything I was never able to say aloud in our district, in a small book. It is called A Quiet and Faithful Home, and it is resting there in the first pinned comment below this window, if it should ever be a comfort to you. There is no hurry about it at all. It will keep. But please do not go yet, because I have not told you about the morning itself, or what the bishop asked me, or the 3 words I gave him back, or what those words cost me, and what they saved. Those are the whole reason I can sit at this window tonight with the thing at rest inside me, and no fear left in it. But here is what no one prepares a plain girl for. They raise you to believe obedience and love will never point in 2 directions, and so they never give you a single word for the day they do. They hand you the whole of the Ordnung and none of the map for the country where it fails you. And so when the morning comes, and it comes to nearly every woman once, the person you would lay down your life for stands on one side, and everything you were taught stands on the other. You have no practice, no ready words, nothing to reach for. You are a girl who was taught only one road, standing at a fork in the dark, with the whole church watching to see which foot you will lift. I still thought the 2 roads were one. Let me tell you how it came to be known, so you understand what broke that morning, and do not carry away the wrong story. Our bishop was not a cruel man. He was old and slow and gentle in his speech, and I never once saw him take pleasure in another soul's correction. He grieved it, some of the men said, before he had to do the hard public part of his office. This is not the tale of a cruel man. It is the tale of a hard rule carried by gentle hands, and the gentleness of the hands is a great part of what makes it so hard to tell, because there is truly no one in it to hate. It came to be known the way everything comes to be known in a plain district, quietly, and then all at once. Ruth had come to me first, weeks before, in the dark of the room we had shared our whole lives, and told me the things she could not tell our mother. There was a child coming, and no marriage yet made, and not much hiding left that a few weeks would allow. I held her while she shook, and I said nothing to anyone, because she was my sister, and she had come to me, and I could not make my mouth carry her trouble to the elders the way I had always been taught I must. So I kept it. For 3 weeks it sat in me like a stone I had swallowed, and it grew heavier every morning at the table. I will tell you what those 3 weeks were like, for it is a thing I had no name for either. I had always believed keeping a secret from the church would feel like sin, dark and heavy and wrong all the way through. And part of it did. But underneath the wrongness, there was something I had never expected, something that felt, God help me, like love, like the truest thing I had ever done. I was covering my sister the way a hen covers a chick, my own body between her and the cold, and it did not feel like pride or rebellion. It felt like the most natural motion my heart had ever made. And that was the part that frightened me most. Not that I had broken a rule, that the breaking of it had felt so much like faithfulness. I still thought the two roads were one. Now here is the morning. Someone had seen, or someone had guessed, and by the time the sun was well up, the word had gone from house to house, and my father was called, and then I was called, to the bishop's front room, the cold, good room they keep for solemn things. Ruth was already there when I came in, sitting very small on a hard chair with her hands in her lap and her eyes on the floor. The bishop sat across from her. 2 ministers stood by the window. My mother stood by the door, her apron twisted up in both her hands. No one was shouting. That is the thing the English never understand about us. It is quiet and kind in its very voice, and the most immovable thing on this earth. And the bishop, when he had said the gentle, sorrowful things an old man says at such a time, turned his slow eyes from Ruth to me. And he asked me, in a voice with no anger in it, only the weight of his office, how long I had known, and who else had known. And the whole room went quiet and looked at me, my mother, and the ministers, and Ruth herself, and I understood in one cold instant that I was standing at the fork, that this was the fork, that there had never been any map, and that whatever came out of my mouth in the next breath would be the road I had chosen for the rest of my life. I still thought the two roads were one, and in that one breath I learned that they were not. I want to tell you honestly how frightened I was. I had never once in my life lied to an elder, not a shaded truth, not a small one, not ever. To lie to the bishop on such a morning was so far outside anything I had ever done that my heart went hard and fast and my mouth went dry as chaff. And Ruth lifted her eyes from the floor and looked at me, only for a moment, and in that look there was no asking. She would never have asked. There was only fear, the plain animal fear of a young thing about to be handed over. And I heard my own voice, from very far away, small and steady in a way I did not feel, say the 3 words. I did not know. I said I had only learned of it that very morning. I looked the bishop full in his kind old face, and I lied. That was the whole of it. 3 words, and a sentence after them. That was the great sin I had feared my whole life without ever knowing it was waiting for me. Not the trouble that had come to Ruth, which was hers, and never mine to tell. My own plain lie, spoken on purpose to an elder, to keep my sister one more day from the full weight of the church. And I will tell you what happened in me after, and it was nothing anyone could see, and it was everything. I waited to feel damned. I had been taught this was the border, that beyond a lie told to the church lay a darkness a soul might not come back from. And it did not come. What came instead, over the days after, was the strangest and most unwelcome peace, and underneath it a question I could not put back to sleep. I had always been told the rule and the will of God were the same thing, one cloth, no seam. And standing in that room, choosing my sister, I had felt for the first time the seam. I had felt the place where the thing men have built and the thing God is come apart in your two hands. And once you have felt that seam, you can never again quite believe there is none. They dealt with Ruth as the district deals with such things, and I will not lay all of that out here, for it is hers and not mine. But I rode home in the back of the buggy with the cold coming up through the boards, and when we were past the last house, I put my face down into my apron and wept, and it was not only grief. It was the weeping you do when a thing you were sure of your whole life has quietly come loose in your hands, and you do not yet know what you are without it. Now I have to be careful here, the same careful I am always careful, because it would be easy to lay this at someone's door, and there is no single door to lay it at. The bishop asked me that question because his own fathers had taught him he must, that a district which will not root out the hidden thing will rot from it, and he believed it the way I believed the ground would hold me. My mother stood by that door in agony, and never once thought to question the rule that was breaking her heart, because no one had ever given her the room to. It is not any one soul's sin. It is the water we all swam in, a long line of gentle people handing down a hard thing, each one meaning nothing but good, each one certain that to protect the church from the truth of us was the same as loving us. And a fish cannot hate the water. That is the hardest kind of wrong there is to name. Many years on, I said a little of this out loud, just once, to an old woman not of our people, and I braced for her to tell me I had done a sin, and she did not. She was quiet a while, then said the thing I had needed for 30 years and never had. She said, "You did not choose against God that morning. You chose the way God chooses. He is always, always on the side of the one being handed over." I had spent my life believing my lie was the one black mark on an obedient soul, where I had failed the church and so failed heaven. And here was one old woman telling me the very thing I had been most ashamed of might have been the most like God I ever was. I cannot tell you what that word did in me. It is one of the reasons I can sit at this window at all. So this is what I do now, and it is a small thing, and it is the largest thing I know how to hand anyone. When a young wife sits down beside me at a quilting or a funeral, and I can see she is carrying something heavy for someone she loves, some secret she keeps out of loyalty and is told is a sin, I lean in close where no deacon can hear, and I tell her the one true thing no one told me. I say, if the day ever comes when obedience and love point two different ways, do not let anyone tell you that you already know which one is God. Sometimes the rule is God, and sometimes the person is. And you will have to stand in that room and choose with fear and trembling, and you may even choose wrong. But choosing to cover someone you love is not the black sin they will tell you it is. And to you, whoever you are, wherever this quiet finds you tonight, I want to say 3 things before I go. If you are a woman who once stood in such a room and chose the person over the rule, and have carried it as your secret shame ever since, hear me. It may not have been your shame at all. It may have been the closest to mercy you were ever allowed to come. If you are a woman who stood in that same room and chose the rule and handed over someone you loved because you were sure it was right, hear me too, for there is no condemning in this window, only company. You did the thing you were given to do with the light you had, and you are allowed to grieve it and lay it down. And if you are a young woman who has never yet had to choose, who still believes, as I once did, that the 2 roads are one, hear me most of all. Someday they may fork. Do not be so certain you know which foot you will lift, or that the church and the good are always the same direction. Keep a little room in your heart for the fork. It is the most honest thing I know to tell you. I wish someone had told me sooner that the day would come, and that it would not make me a wicked woman to have chosen my sister, and that a person can love God with her whole heart and still, one cold morning, have to choose which of his commands is truly his. No one told me. And so I have become the woman who tells the young that the fork is coming, while there is still time for the telling to be a comfort and not a grief they carry home from a cold front room. Tell me in the comments, so the other women know they are not the only one who ever stood in that room. Have you ever had to choose between someone you loved and a rule you were raised to keep? And whichever way you chose, has anyone ever once told you that you were allowed to lay it down? I read every one, and I answer where I can. Sit at this window with me again. There is always more of the story than one evening can hold.